of Allah, the Merciful, the Beneficent. Now the main headlines. Free Muslim calls on the governments of Islamic countries to stop the tragedy of children in Syria and Yemen. Azerbaijan. 2 Shia teachers fined after holding mourning ceremonies in class. Istanbul hosts symposium calling on Islamic countries to intervene to end China's atrocities against the Uyghurs. Majority of displaced populations in Afghanistan are women, according to the United Nations. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is Ayub Nouinou and you are watching Shia Waves live from Imam Hussein TV free. The international non-violence organization Free Muslim has expressed with great pain the catastrophe that children in Syria and Yemen are exposed to and the killing of tens of thousands of them, calling on all Islamic governments to unite efforts to stop this ongoing tragedy. Because of the ongoing war on the two countries and the control of terrorist groups, tens of thousands of children have fallen victim to violence, terrorism and bloody conflicts. In a statement received by Shia Waves news agency, the organization stated that it expresses with pain the disastrous UN statements regarding the affairs of children in both the countries of Syria and Yemen, and calls on all Islamic governments to unite efforts to stop this ongoing tragedy. The statement stated, official data issued by the United Nations Children's Fund, otherwise known as UNICEF, showed that tens of thousands of children were killed as a result of the bloody conflicts taking place in both the countries of Syria and Yemen, stressing that these numbers are subject to increase with the continuation of these wars. According to the organization, more than 11,000 Yemeni children have been killed or injured, at a rate of 4 children per day, while no less than 29,894 children have been killed in Syria since March 2011, including 182 children due to torture, in addition to 5,162 children who are still detained or forcibly disappeared. The organization believes that the human, moral and legal responsibility requires Islamic governments in general and Arab governments in particular to intervene to put an end to these atrocities away from political agendas and factional interests by urging and unifying efforts to stop the raging war in those two countries. At the same time, however, the organization called for extending a hand of aid and assistance to save the two peoples from the suffering that has plagued them for more than a decade, stressing the importance of organizing urgent medical and food aid campaigns. Two Shia teachers have been fined in Azerbaijan after holding mourning ceremonies for Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, in their classrooms. More details in the following report.
The Forum 18 news website reported that 2 courts in the Azerbaijani capital, Baku, imposed 2 fines on 2 Shia women for holding mourning ceremonies inside school classes, which they had revived during the sacred month of Muharram, mourning Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, the 3rd Imam of Shia Muslims. The site mentioned in a detailed report translated by Shia Waves news agency that a court in Baku imposed a fine on Shula Jafarova with an average wage of 2 months for holding mourning ceremonies in the Islamic month of Muharram with her students at school and uploading them on social media. It added that the Goicha court also imposed a similar fine on Samira Jafarova because of a video clip that was published on social media, which she performed with 15 students to lament Imam Hussein, peace be upon him. Noting that Jafarova confirmed during the appeal session that holding religious ceremonies is a right that stems from the constitution, but the court refused that. The report notes that these 2 women are among 19 people who were fined during the year 2022 for exercising freedom of religion or belief. It explained that the Muslims in the city collected money to pay the fine of Shula Jafarova, but she was also forced to pay an additional fine of 105 manats because of her surname Al-Jafari. The report added that Ms. Jafarova confirmed on her part that the parents of the 15 children all agreed to their participation in religious rituals. The report also states that the regional representative of the State Affairs Committee for Religious Organizations in Baku, Ilham Garibov, disavowed the entire case and did not defend the two women and their right to hold religious ceremonies.
Several Turkestan organizations held a symposium entitled Genocide in East Turkestan and the Search for Rights at Muhammad al-Fatah University, which shed light on the atrocities committed by China against the Muslim Uyghur minority and coincided with the revival of the International Human Rights Day. The head of the International Society for Refugee Rights, Abdullah Rasul Damir, said in a press statement seen by Shia Waves news agency, China is detaining nearly 3 million people in over 1,200 detention camps, according to official information. He continued, the other name for Chinese oppression is genocide, calling on the national and international public to be aware and take responsibility for what the Uyghur Muslims are going through. The statement stated that religious education is prohibited and it is forbidden to possess and read religious books, including the Holy Quran, perform prayers, acts of worship, grow a beard, wear hijab, and wear long skirts, adding that the Chinese authorities have obligated all Uyghurs to confinement in homes under the pretext of COVID. The doors of the houses are closed with welding machines and iron chains, and people are not allowed to go out, even to meet their basic needs. The head of the Humanitarian Relief and Human Rights and Freedoms Authority, Bülent Yıldırım, stated that there is great persecution taking place in East Turkestan. Yıldırım called on the Islamic world to be strong and brave and work to impose sanctions on China and not deal with it commercially, adding that China must see massive opposition against it. Let us remind our respected viewers of today's headlines. Free Muslim calls on the governments of Islamic countries to stop the tragedy of children in Syria and Yemen. Azerbaijan. 2 Shia teachers fined after holding mourning ceremonies in class. Istanbul hosts symposium calling on Islamic countries to intervene to end China's atrocities against the Uyghurs. Also tonight, accelerated action needed to ensure safe drinking water, sanitation and hygiene for all, according to the World Health Organization. The UN Women in Afghanistan said that women make up the majority of the displaced populations in Afghanistan. The inability to exercise property rights or seek legal help means women in informal settlements live every day in fear of being evicted. Women and girls are affected by negative coping mechanisms due to lack of food. Women are forced to sell their assets to buy food, or in most extreme cases, families have to sell their girls for marriage, UN Women in Afghanistan said on Twitter. We have sold the home belongings. We have an old carpet and we sold it to provide for our expenses. We have food for lunch. We are worried about dinner, one of the vulnerable women said. Tolo News reported the World Food Programme in Afghanistan said that it has been providing assistance to women across the country. And now we continue some short news. The Office of the Religious Authority, His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq al-Hussein al-Shirazi, Mazar al-Sharif in Afghanistan, provided financial aid to hundreds of orphan families. The charitable work carried out on Monday came as part of the humanitarian charitable activities of the Office of His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi. Pakistani Federal Minister for Human Rights, Mian Riaz Hussain Pirzada, expressed deep condolences on the sad demise of Allama Ghazalfar Abbas Hashimi Tunsawi, Pakistani Urdu Point newspaper reported. In his message, the Federal Minister said that Allama Ghazalfar Abbas Hashimi was a prominent religious scholar who spent his whole life promoting and propagating the message of Karbala. The minister said that due to his passion and struggle, without being able to attend a formal seminary, Allama did a study of religion that is no less short than a miracle. That's why he's rightly addressed as library scholar or Allama. A delegation from the Misbah al-Hussein Foundation for Relief and Development, affiliated to the office of Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq al-Hussein al-Shirazi in the holy city of Karbala, attended the opening ceremony of the Heritage and Artifacts exhibition organized by the House of Arts and Culture in Holy Karbala. Hussein al-Adli, the Public Relations Officer, and Sheikh Mazin al-Tamimi, Development Department Officer, coordinated with organizing committee and the House to cooperate on launching activities that serve the society and especially the needy and orphan families. An exhibition of Quranic artworks is underway at Pakistan National Council of the Arts in Islamabad. The event was inaugurated by advisor to the Prime Minister on Political and Public Affairs and National Heritage, Angir Amir Muqam, on Wednesday. The exhibition was organized by National Heritage and Culture Division, while artist Khan Shahnawaz Malhi presented exquisite hand-knit verses of the Holy Quran. Amir Muqam said, "Looking at today's exhibition, I feel a sense of spirituality. The NH&CD is also taking substantial steps to promote Islamic calligraphy." Muqam praised Khan Shahnawaz Malhi for his amazing work in which he knitted Quranic verses with threads on shisham wood. The exhibition, which continues until today, is attracting a large number of visitors as well as foreign delegates. Members of South Lanarkshire Council have ratified a motion which tries to confront growing Islamophobia as well as other forms of racism and discrimination in the area. At a full council meeting last week, Councillor Ali Salamati brought forward a motion asking for the local authority to adopt the UK all-parliamentary group definition of Islamophobia. The motion also called for the Council to re-establish its commitment to opposing racism and discrimination in all forms and to support and promote Islamophobia Awareness Month in November every year. The Muslim population in Scotland has significantly increased in recent years, and Muslims contribute to all aspects of life and are essential for parts of Scottish society. Urgent action is needed globally and locally to achieve safe and sustainably managed water, sanitation and hygiene for all in order to prevent devastating impacts on the health of millions of people. More details in the following report.
Findings from World Health Organization and UN Water's Global Analysis and Assessment of Sanitation and Drinking Water report shows that acceleration is needed in many countries to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goal, water and sanitation for all by 2030. While 45% of countries are on track to achieve their nationally defined drinking water coverage targets, only 25% of countries are on track to achieve their national sanitation targets. Less than a third of countries reported to have sufficient human resources required to carry out key drinking water, sanitation and hygiene functions. The GLAAS 2022 report, which details the latest status of WASH systems in more than 120 countries, is the largest data collection from the greatest number of countries to date. While there has been an increase in WASH budgets in some countries, a large number, over 75% of countries, reported insufficient funding to implement their WASH plans and strategies. We are facing an urgent crisis poor access to safe drinking water, sanitation and hygiene claim millions of lives each year. While the increasing frequency and intensity of climate-related extreme weather events continue to hamper the delivery of safe wash services, said Dr. Tedros Adhanom, World Health Organization Director General. Reporting Aruj Fatima for Shia Waves.
A report issued by the United Nations Credentials Committee confirmed that a decision on whether the Taliban government and the military junta in Myanmar could send the UN ambassador to New York for the second time was postponed, but the decision could be reconsidered in the next 9 months. The 193-member United Nations General Assembly is due to approve the report on Friday, which also delayed a decision on Libya's rival claim to the country's seat at the United Nations. The 9-member UN Credentials Committee includes Russia, China and the United States. Diplomats said that delaying decisions leaves the current envoys in their country's seats. Claims have been put forward again on the Myanmar and Afghanistan seats from the Taliban government and the Myanmar military junta against the envoys of the two governments they overthrew last year. The UN's acceptance of the Taliban government or military junta in Myanmar would be a step towards the international recognition that both sides seek. Last year, the United Nations General Assembly supported the postponement of a decision on the credentials of Myanmar and Afghanistan. The UN Credentials Committee met on the 12th of December and agreed without a vote to defer consideration of the credentials of Myanmar, Afghanistan and Libya and to return to consideration of these credentials at a later date at the 77th session ending in mid-September from next year. The decision comes because of the violations of these parties against their people, the restriction of freedoms and the lack of respect for international laws in preserving the rights of individuals. We have reached the end of today's Shia Wave show. Let's remind our viewers of today's headlines. Free Muslim calls on the governments of Islamic countries to stop the tragedy of children in Syria and Yemen. Azerbaijan, 2 Shia teachers fined after holding mourning ceremonies in class. Istanbul hosts symposium calling on Islamic countries to intervene to end China's atrocities against the Uyghurs. Majority of displaced populations in Afghanistan are women, according to the United Nations. Accelerated action is needed to ensure safe drinking water, sanitation and hygiene for all, according to the WHO. Participation of the Taliban government and the Myanmar Military Council not allowed in the United Nations at the present time. You can view the latest news on Shia Waves website, and you can send news of your city or country to be published on our news agency. Please contact us on the numbers at the bottom of the screen. This is the end of today's news, and thank you all for watching. We pray to Allah Almighty to hasten the reappearance of the Master of our time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم إني أسألك الأمان